Give my daughter one of the babies. You can keep the other, Kim's mother told me. For a heartbeat, I thought I'd misheard her. The words hung there, sharp and impossible, and I felt my fingers tighten around the phone until my knuckles ached. A faint ringing filled my ear, like my body was rejecting the sound before my mind could catch up. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft click of the refrigerator cycling off. The sudden silence felt cold, too still, as if even the house was holding its breath with me. A pot of rice simmered on the stove, its steam curling lazily through the air, and the ordinary smell of garlic and onions now felt painfully out of place. "Did you hear what I said?" she pressed, her tone clipped, impatient. "Kim can't have children. Your daughter is having two. It's the most reasonable solution." My jaw tightened. "These are not objects to divide," I said quietly. The words felt scraped raw on the way out. She sighed as though I were a child missing the obvious. "Mrs. Harris, be sensible. Joe wants to be a father. Kim deserves to be a mother. And your daughter is, well, young, overwhelmed, alone. Wouldn't you prefer stability for the twins?" My free hand pressed against the counter, grounding me. A thin crack ran across the formica, something I'd meant to fix for years. Now it felt symbolic. A small damage spreading under pressure. "Where is Joe?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "He's here," she said, then called out, "Joe, tell her." A muffled male voice drifted through the line. It makes sense," he said. "He didn't come to the phone. He didn't even try." A slow heat gathered behind my ribs. Not rage, not yet, but something heavier, something old. On the table beside me lay the ultrasound printout my daughter had left earlier. 2 tiny profiles captured in grainy black and white. 2 shapes curled into themselves. 2 heartbeats I had watched flicker on a screen. I thought of my daughter's trembling voice when she'd said she could feel them turn, her palm resting protectively on her belly, the way she whispered to them when she thought no one was listening, and now a stranger, a woman I barely knew, was suggesting they be divided like matching furniture. "You've overstepped," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was no longer soft. "Whatever arrangements you imagine, you will not discuss my daughter's pregnancy as if it belongs to you." There was a sharp inhale on the other end. "You need to calm down," she snapped. "Kim will be their stepmother. She has every right to be involved. She attended the genetic counseling because it mattered. Her medical history matters." "It wasn't her appointment," I said. "It should have been," she shot back. "Your daughter is being difficult. She wouldn't even let Joe's partner attend the 20-week scan. Everything she does is dramatic, posting announcements without consulting them, creating tension, acting like these children won't be ours, too." Hours. A quiet chill slid down my spine. The refrigerator clicked back on, its hum filling the silence between us. Outside, a car drove by, headlights sweeping briefly across my window. Life continued in tiny, indifferent motions while a woman on the phone tried to rewrite my daughter's future. "You need to understand the reality of this situation," she continued. "If you all cooperate, everyone can share parenting. If not, well, courts take stability and resources seriously. A young single mother versus a stable couple? Think carefully about what you want this to look like." For a moment, I didn't speak. The pause stretched, long enough that I heard her exhale sharply, annoyed by the space my silence created. My breath felt shallow, caught behind my ribs. Finally, I said, "From now on, you will not contact me again. Any further communication will go through my daughter or an attorney." "That would be a mistake," she warned. "Perhaps," I said, "but it will be our mistake to make, not yours." "Your daughter will regret this," she said, "when she's in labor, screaming, overwhelmed and begging for support. She'll realize she needs us." My eyes drifted back to the ultrasound on the table. 2 small forms pressed close, as if already choosing each other against the world. "She won't be alone," I said. "She has me." A brittle laugh crackled through the line. We'll see about that." I ended the call before she could say anything else. The kitchen settled into a heavy stillness, the kind that comes after lightning but before thunder. I set the phone down next to the ultrasound picture, my hand trembling just once before I forced it still. Somewhere deep in my chest, something shifted. Not fully formed yet, but unmistakable. This wasn't just interference. This was the beginning of a line being crossed, and I could feel, clear as a warning pulse, that they were already preparing to cross it again. Joe called the next evening just as I was rinsing dishes, his name lighting up my phone in a pale blue glow on the counter. "I heard my mom called you," he said without preamble. His voice was tight, defensive, like someone already bracing for an argument. "She was just trying to smooth things over." Water rushed over my hands, too hot, reddening the skin. I turned the tap off and let the sudden quiet stretch. "She told me I should give your girlfriend one of my grandchildren," I said. "Is that what smoothing things over looks like to you?" He exhaled sharply. "You're taking it the wrong way. Kim and my mom just care. They're trying to be involved. You know this is a lot for everyone." "It is a lot," I agreed. "For my daughter's body, for her mind, for her heart. The rest of you are observers." There was a pause, heavy and loaded. I could hear something in the background on his end. A TV, a female voice, a cupboard closing. I pictured Kim in their kitchen, listening, arms folded, lips pressed thin, deciding if his answers were acceptable. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said finally. "We all want what's best for the twins." "Then start by remembering whose womb they're inside," I replied. I ended the call before he could answer and wiped my wet hands on a dish towel, my reflection wavering in the dark window above the sink. Outside, the streetlights washed the sidewalk in cold, flat light. My own face looked older than I felt, the lines around my mouth deeper, my eyes more tired than yesterday. I grabbed my keys. I needed to see my daughter. Her apartment was only 10 minutes away, but that night every red light felt personal. The sky was already black, the glow from storefronts and gas stations blurring through my windshield. My chest tightened with each mile, like there was a string pulling me toward her, afraid of what I would find when I arrived. She opened the door in an oversized t-shirt, one hand at the small of her back, the other resting unconsciously over the swell of her stomach. Her eyes were puffy, lashes clumped together. "You saw it?" she asked, skipping hello. I didn't know which "it" she meant at first, until she stepped aside and pointed to the coffee table. Her phone lay there, screen lit. On it, Kim's face smiled from a social media post, her hand resting on a sonogram image that wasn't hers. "We are so blessed to be expecting twins the non-traditional way," the caption read. "God has funny plans, but we can't wait to meet our little miracles." A collage of balloons and confetti stickers surrounded the picture. Underneath, comments poured in. "So happy for you, Kim. You'll be the best mom. You deserve this more than anyone." The word mom appeared over and over, never once next to my daughter's name. I felt my jaw lock. "When did she put this up?" "This morning," my daughter said. Her voice was flat, strangled. "I posted my announcement last night. Just me and the ultrasound. No names, no drama. I woke up to this." I picked up the phone, the bright screen reflecting off the living room window. The light in here was warm, soft yellow from the lamp near the couch. It should have felt cozy. Instead, it felt like a stage someone else had dragged us onto. "Did you say anything?" I asked. "I tried to call Joe," she said. "He didn't answer. Then he texted saying I was being territorial and that Kim was just excited, that I should be more flexible because the twins are their blessing too." Her lips trembled on the last words. She swallowed hard, rubbed at her eyes with the heel of her hand. My chest ached. I wanted to pull her into my arms, but she was already on the edge of something fragile. I sat beside her instead, close enough that our shoulders touched. "You are not a surrogate," I said, "and they do not get to build a brand off your pregnancy." She gave a small, bitter laugh that sounded nothing like her. Too late. She's already planning a gender reveal party. I turned to look at her. What? She texted me a list of themes, my daughter said, reaching for a folded piece of paper on the table. Her fingers shook as she unfolded it. Blue and pink smoke bombs, balloon pop, cupcake filling. She said since she and Joe would be raising them half the time, they should host the event. Host? I repeated. The word tasted wrong. She asked if I could keep the gender a surprise for myself so they could find out first and plan something aesthetically consistent. My stomach dropped. I closed my eyes for a moment, just one heartbeat, then forced them open again. What did you tell her? That she was out of her mind, my daughter said, a flicker of fire finally breaking through her exhaustion. That I would choose who came to my scans, that if anyone was hosting a party, it would be me. And she left me on red for 3 hours, my daughter said. Then Joe called and said I was hurting Kim's feelings, that she's fragile because of her infertility, and that I should be more sensitive. There it was. The emotional cruelty dressed up as moral obligation. I felt something cold settle at the base of my spine. The TV in the corner was paused on a streaming menu, its blue light washing the room in a tired glow. On the kitchen counter, a mug sat abandoned, a ring of tea drying around the rim, small signs of a life interrupted. Have they asked you again about custody? I asked softly. She nodded. Kim's mom called me 2 days ago. She said if I loved the twins, I wouldn't deny them a complete home. She implied that if I didn't cooperate now, a judge might see me as unreasonable. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The air felt thick. What did you say? I hung up, she whispered. Then I cried for an hour because I'm so tired, Mom. I'm tired of being scared of my own phone. Her cell buzzed on the table as if summoned. We both jumped. The screen lit up with a new notification, a photo from Kim's story. For a second, we just stared at it, neither of us moving to open it. Finally, my daughter swiped. The image was of a stack of tiny folded onesies on what was clearly their kitchen island. 2 little outfits were laid out on top, one with Mama's Miracle printed in cursive across the chest, the other with bonus Mama's Blessing. The tags were still on. The caption read, "Can't wait to meet our babies. They're already so loved." No mention that the womb those babies were in belonged to the woman sitting right beside me. I felt heat rush to my face. Save everything, I said quietly. Screenshots, messages, posts, all of it. She looked at me, eyes wide. You think it's that serious? I held her gaze. I think they're telling us exactly who they are. She swallowed, then nodded, reaching for her phone with a steadier hand. A few days later, the hospital called to confirm her 20-week Level 2 scan. I sat at her table while she put the phone on speaker. The appointment date and time were rattled off in a cheerful voice, followed by the standard instructions. When the call ended, her screen lit again almost immediately. It was Joe. "Take Kim as your guest," he texted. "She's more invested in the details than I am. Plus, it would mean a lot to her." My daughter stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. For a full 10 seconds, she didn't move. The only sound in the room was the faint ticking of the wall clock, marking out each second of her silence. "She wants to be the one in the room when they measure their hearts and spines," my daughter whispered, "and he's fine with that." "She wants your place," I said. "She's not satisfied being the girlfriend. She wants to be the mother." My daughter's face hardened in a way I hadn't seen before. She typed slowly, then read aloud as she wrote, "I'll be taking the one person who will be there no matter what happens, my mother. You can come if you like. Kim cannot." She hit send. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, his reply flashed on the screen. "You're being cruel. Kim is sobbing. I hope you're happy." My daughter's hand trembled, but she didn't delete the message. She simply turned her phone face down on the table. I reached across and took her free hand. Her palm was damp, her fingers icy. "You're not cruel," I said. "You're drawing a line. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always call your boundaries cruel." That night, as I drove home under the harsh white glare of the streetlights, my own phone vibrated on the passenger seat. Message after message lit the screen. Unknown numbers, group chats, names I didn't recognize. When I pulled into my driveway and finally picked it up, I saw what had happened. Kim had just posted a video of a gender reveal party. Blue smoke in the air, laughter, shouts. Joe grinning beside her as she held up a sign that said, "We're having twin boys." The location tag was their backyard. The guest list, judging from the faces in the background, included both their families. My daughter wasn't in a single frame. And as the video replayed in the glow of my dark car, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "You should be proud of your son. He and Kim are going to be such amazing parents." I stared at those words until they blurred, my pulse thudding in my ears. Somewhere between the blue smoke and the cheering faces, something sharp lodged under my ribs and stayed there. They weren't just overstepping anymore. They were rewriting the story of these children's lives before the ink was even dry on their first breath. I didn't grow up imagining I would one day stand between my daughter and a family, determined to rewrite the story of her children. But when I look back, every hard year, every quiet sacrifice, every moment I folded myself smaller so someone else could breathe easier, maybe all of it led me here. I was 19 when I married her father. We had nothing except a rusting two-door sedan, a futon that sagged in the middle, and a shared belief that life would figure itself out if we kept moving. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a nail salon, the scent of acetone drifting through the vents at all hours. I worked nights at a diner, flipping pancakes for truckers and drunks, while he worked construction when the weather allowed. When I found out I was pregnant, I told him on a rainy Tuesday when his boots were still wet from the job site. He pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe, and for a moment, it felt like hope. My daughter arrived in the middle of a snowstorm. The hospital parking lot was buried in white, and I remember clutching her tiny, blanket-wrapped body and thinking that if the world outside collapsed into ice and silence, at least she was warm in my arms. I was 21, exhausted, terrified, and so full of love I didn't know how to contain it. The nurses showed me how to swaddle her, how to check her temperature, how to clean the delicate curl of her ear with a damp cloth. But no one prepares you for that first night home, when the heater rattles and the shadows on the wall look too big and the tiny person in your arms depends on you for everything. Her father tried. I still believe that. But trying doesn't always translate into staying. When she was 5, he left a note on the kitchen table. 3 sentences. No explanation. The sound I made when I found it wasn't a cry. It was a breaking. I still hear it sometimes in the quiet moments. Those next years were a blur of work and survival. I took on 2 cleaning jobs during the day and waited tables in the evenings. My hands were always cracked from bleach, my back always aching. But I kept going because she needed shoes for school and lunches packed in the morning and friends' birthday parties with gifts I bought using coupons and clearance aisles. I remember walking into a thrift store the year she turned 7, searching for a dress she could wear to her class photo. It was pale yellow with tiny embroidered daisies. And when she tried it on, she twirled in front of the mirror as if she were the sun itself. That dress cost $4. I cried in the parking lot afterward, my forehead pressed against the steering wheel. Not because it was cheap, but because she made it look priceless. Every year brought a new challenge. When she was 9, she developed a chronic cough. I sat in waiting rooms holding insurance forms I barely understood. I remember the smell of antiseptic, the harsh overhead lights flickering, the way she leaned against my shoulder as we waited for test results. The doctor told us it was manageable, just something we'd monitor. Relief washed over me so sharply it felt like pain. That night, I made her favorite dinner, macaroni with too much cheese, and pretended everything was normal. My daughter grew into a quiet, observant teenager, the kind who laughed rarely but genuinely, the kind who helped carry groceries without being asked, the kind who stayed up late studying under the soft glow of a desk lamp, her hair pulled into a messy bun, half-empty teacups gathering on her nightstand. She'd inherited my resilience, but not my optimism. I tried to give her both, but some things can't be gifted. They have to be found. When she left for college, the apartment felt too large, too silent. I kept her room exactly as she left it. The lavender bed sheets, the chipped ceramic mug she made in high school art class, the photo booth strips pinned to her mirror. I used to sit on the edge of her bed some evenings, running my hand over the comforter, remembering the nights she crawled into my room after a nightmare, whispering that she couldn't sleep unless she heard my breathing. She came home after graduation with a degree in early childhood development and a sense of purpose I envied. She wanted to work with kids, to understand them, to make them feel safe in a world that often wasn't. She took a job at a local center. Nothing glamorous, nothing high-paying, but it mattered to her. And that was enough. Then she met Joe. He was charming at first, polite, clean-cut, the kind of man who held eye contact a little too long, but I brushed that off as enthusiasm. They dated for a few months, nothing too serious, but enough that she told me over coffee one morning that she liked him, really liked him. The softness in her voice made me take a deeper breath than usual. When he broke up with her, she didn't tell me for 3 days. I found her sitting in her car outside my building, her hands gripping the steering wheel, her knuckles white. She kept saying she didn't know what she had done wrong. I told her sometimes the wrong people leave so the right people have space to arrive. She nodded, but her eyes were clouded. She found out she was pregnant 2 weeks later. I remember the moment she told me. She stood in my doorway, phone still in her hand, the pregnancy test sticking out of her purse as if she hadn't had the strength to put it away. She looked like she was bracing for judgment. Instead, I stepped forward and held her face in my hands. "You and these babies will be loved," I said. "Nothing else matters." When she told Joe, things shifted. He wasn't angry. He was eager. Too eager. He wanted to attend every appointment, know every detail, every symptom. At first I thought he was just excited. Then I saw the way he talked about the twins as if they already lived in his home, as if my daughter were simply the vessel delivering them to him and his girlfriend. I noticed how he always said, "our babies," never "your pregnancy," how he minimized her discomfort, her exhaustion, her fears, brushing them aside like minor inconveniences in the way of his dream. And then there was Kim. The first time I met her was at a doctor's visit. My daughter was too drained to attend alone. She appeared polished, composed, her hair perfectly straightened, her nails immaculate. She extended her hand to me with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Throughout the appointment, she corrected the doctor, redirected questions meant for my daughter, and mentioned her fertility struggles, as though every medical detail of her life should factor into the twins' existence. Afterward, my daughter sat in the passenger seat of my car, staring out the window. When I asked if she was okay, she whispered, "She acted like I wasn't even there." I reached across the console and took her hand, feeling her pulse quicken under my fingers. That night, I went home and opened the shoebox where I kept mementos from the years of raising her alone. Her first watercolor painting, a birthday card she made for me at age 6 that said, in crooked letters, "Mom is my safe place." The dried lilac she tucked behind my ear at 12 when she said I looked like a fairy. I looked at those small treasures and thought of the babies she now carried, how they would one day create their own small echoes of love for her if she were allowed to be their mother fully. One of my emotional anchors has always been scent, specifically lavender. I grew lavender in pots outside our apartment windows because its smell kept me calm when she was little. Whenever life felt too heavy, I'd run my fingers along the soft blossoms and let the fragrance settle my heartbeat. Even now, There's a small lavender sachet tucked in my purse. I touched it the night Kim posted her announcement claiming non-traditional motherhood. The scent didn't calm me. It only made the violation feel deeper. Another anchor is her baby blanket, pale pink, frayed along the edges, washed 1,000 times. She slept with it every night until she was 8. I keep it in the bottom drawer of my dresser, and there have been nights in these past months when I've taken it out, pressing the worn cotton between my palms, remembering the weight of her tiny body asleep on my chest, remembering that I raised her with everything I had, remembering that no one gets to trespass on that history. The third anchor is the rocking chair. It's old, older than my daughter. It belonged to my grandmother, then my mother, then me. The wood is worn smooth, where countless hands have gripped the armrests. Generations of lullabies have been whispered into the air around it. I plan to give it to my daughter when the twins arrive. When I sit in it now, it creaks softly, settling under my weight, as if acknowledging the burden I carry for her. All of these memories live in me like a second heartbeat. They form the map of who I became and why I cannot step aside now. Because every sacrifice I made, every job, every sleepless night, every bill paid late so she could have a field trip fee covered, was done so she could stand in her own life with dignity. And watching Kim and her mother and even Joe try to strip that dignity from her feels like watching someone try to rewrite the years I bled for her. I remember a morning when she was 12, running late for school, hair tangled, shoes mismatched. She burst into tears because she couldn't find her backpack. I found it under the kitchen table, covered in crayon scribbles from a child she babysat the night before. She cried harder when she saw it. I sat beside her on the floor and said, "Darling, nothing in this house is ruined. Everything here can be cleaned, fixed, or forgiven." She rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Even me?" And I wrapped my arms around her and said, "Especially you." Now she is carrying twin boys, scared and strong all at once, and strangers are trying to claim her children before she's even held them. Before she's even felt what it's like to place their warm bodies against her chest and breathe them in. Before she's even whispered their names. I think of all this as I sit in my rocking chair at night, the lavender sachet in my lap, the baby blanket folded beside me. The room is dim, the only light coming from the lamp in the hallway. Shadows stretch long across the floor. My daughter is sleeping miles away, one hand resting protectively over her stomach, dreaming of 2 tiny boys. And I know, deep in the bones carved by decades of survival, that the world she is stepping into is sharper than the one I carried her through. I know the sacrifices she will make. I know the exhaustion waiting for her. I know the love that will bloom so fiercely it almost hurts. And I know the danger of people who believe entitlement is the same as motherhood. The rocking chair creaks softly as I shift my weight. The scent of lavender drifts upward. Outside, a car passes, headlights sweeping briefly across the window, then fading. I close my eyes and inhale deeply. Everything I lived through made me strong enough for this moment. Everything she lived through made her brave enough to fight. But as I sit there in the low light, listening to the house settle around me, a single fear rises like a shadow I can't shake. If they are already crossing lines before the twins are even born, what will they attempt once the babies arrive? The pressure didn't come all at once. It crept in slowly, settling into the edges of our days the way cold settles into old bones, quiet, insistent, impossible to ignore once it takes hold. By the time I recognized the pattern, the damage was already threading through my daughter's life like cracks running under paint. It began with Joe showing up unannounced. He arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, standing outside her apartment when she got home from work. She called me as she walked up the stairs. Her voice was calm but too even. "He's here," she whispered. I don't know why. I was already grabbing my keys, but she said, "Don't come yet, just stay on the line." I heard the door open. "Why didn't you answer my calls?" he said. His tone was soft enough to sound reasonable, but something underneath it was sharp. "I was working," she said. A small silence, heavy, weighted. "You always say that," he murmured. I could hear her keys clatter onto the counter. She took a long breath, the kind someone takes before bracing their ribs against a blow. "What do you want?" "Joe." "You didn't post the gender reveal I asked you to," he said. "Everyone thinks I'm hiding something." She let out a breath that trembled at the edges. "I'm not posting anything. You held a party without me." "You're being dramatic." His voice shifted, barely but enough. The softness evaporated, leaving something brittle behind. "You embarrassed Kim," he continued. "All her friends were asking why you didn't come. She had to make excuses for you." "For me?" my daughter said quietly. "You didn't even tell me." He ignored that. "She's trying to bond with the boys," he said. "She needs this, and you're making everything harder." Harder. That word slid like rust across my skin. When he finally left, my daughter sat at her kitchen table, head bowed over her hands. I arrived moments later. She didn't cry. She just stared at the floor as though her spirit had slipped down there and she wasn't sure how to lift it again. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. "You won't have to," I said. But I realized immediately I shouldn't have said it. Not because it wasn't true, but because hope had no place in this stage of the descent. It was too early, too fragile, almost dangerous. A week later, Kim began showing up in ways that felt deliberate. She sent lists of approved maternity diets, criticizing every meal my daughter ate. "That sandwich has too much sodium. You shouldn't be drinking juice, it spikes glucose. Walking isn't real exercise." The texts came at all hours, each word needling unspoken judgment. My daughter stopped eating full meals. She told me she just wasn't hungry, but I recognized the shrinking posture, the way she pressed her lips tight while chewing. It reminded me of the way she held herself after her father left, like guilt had taken up residence in the back of her throat. Still, the worst part wasn't the words, it was the silences Kim used between them. When my daughter didn't reply fast enough, Kim would send a single period, just a dot, cold, bare, accusatory, and somehow that dot carried more condemnation than any paragraph could have. My daughter would stare at it, her breathing shallow, as if that tiny mark had the power to reshape her. Gaslighting thrives in small spaces. One afternoon, my daughter forwarded me a message Kim sent after a routine prenatal appointment, one Kim was not invited to. "Next time, we all need to attend," Kim wrote. "It's not fair that you make decisions without us." Us. As though she weren't the woman whose boyfriend got my daughter pregnant, as though my daughter were an employee failing to meet expectations. When my daughter didn't reply, Kim called. My daughter put it on speaker for me to hear. "You're excluding me," Kim said. Her voice trembled theatrically, like someone auditioning for sorrow. "I'm trying so hard. I buy things for the nursery. I talk to them every night, but you keep pushing me out." "They're not born yet," my daughter said, "and I'm their mother." A silence dropped, so sudden and deep that even I held my breath. Then Kim exhaled sharply. "You're selfish. You don't understand what it's like to be infertile. You're punishing me for what my body can't do." My daughter's shoulders hunched. Vulnerability pricked through her voice. "I'm not punishing anyone." "Then start acting like these boys belong to all of us." My daughter ended the call, but her hands shook for minutes afterward. The following Friday, Joe showed up again. This time, he brought a clipboard. "I printed a shared custody plan," he announced as soon as she opened the door. "We should get ahead of this before things get messy." She stared at him. "Custody? They're not even born." "Exactly. We need a schedule before emotion gets in the way." He stepped past her without waiting for permission, spreading papers across the table. The sound of each sheet slapping the surface felt like an intrusion made tangible. "1 week at your place," he said. "1 week with us, and once they're old enough, we'll shift to 3-day rotations." She sank into a chair, tension rippling through her posture. "You can't plan something like this," she said. "Why not?" he said. "It's practical." "It's controlling," she whispered. He didn't like that. His jaw tightened. "I'm being responsible," he said. "Kim found legal templates online. If you sign now, we avoid court later." She glanced at me, her eyes wide, a flicker of panic crossing her face. I moved closer but didn't speak. She needed to respond in her own voice. "No," she said simply. Another silence. This one stretched so long it bent the air around us. Joe's eyes grew colder. "You're making a mistake," he said. "Judges don't look kindly on uncooperative mothers." My lungs tightened. I could feel the room tilting. The smallest part of me wondered if he actually believed the things he said, or if believing them made it easier to sleep at night. "Please leave," my daughter said. He stood there a moment, unmoving, his gaze sweeping the apartment as though cataloging what he believed he had a claim to. Then he gathered the papers and walked out without another word. The door closed with a soft click. My daughter folded forward, her arms braced on her knees, her breath hitched. For a moment, I thought she might faint. I touched her back gently. She didn't lift her head. That was the first collapsing moment. The next began with a phone call from her workplace. She had been at her desk when Kim showed up unannounced, smiling, carrying a folder, acting as if she belonged in the middle of a preschool facility. She said she was here to discuss maternity leave coordination, my daughter told me later, her voice stripped bare. Kim had walked straight past the front desk, ignoring the staff's confusion, and sat beside my daughter in the classroom. She told the toddlers she was one of the baby's moms, while the other teachers exchanged stunned glances. When my daughter pulled her aside and asked her to leave, Kim responded with a cold whisper, "You owe me involvement. These boys are mine too." The whisper wasn't loud, but it carved something into my daughter's spine. Kim left only after my daughter threatened to involve administration. As she exited, she paused in the doorway and tilted her head, examining my daughter with a strange, almost clinical interest. Then she smiled, a small, silent smile that did not belong to someone stable. Later that evening, my daughter sat at her table, running her fingers along the rim of a ceramic mug. I saw the tremble there, just one, small, barely visible, but it said everything. "I feel like I'm disappearing," she whispered. "Every time they talk to me, it feels like my life is being rewritten while I'm still living it." Another vulnerability moment, a quiet one, the kind that burrows. I reached for her hand. She let me take it, but her fingers were cold. Over the next week, the rhythm of cruelty became more unpredictable. They alternated between fake concern and outright hostility, between over-involvement and sudden icy distance. It was disorienting, like trying to walk on shifting ground. One evening, Kim sent my daughter a long message about nursery themes and co-parenting philosophies. When my daughter didn't respond immediately, she was asleep, Kim showed up at her apartment complex and sat in her car with the headlights off. My daughter didn't notice until she stepped onto the balcony for air and saw the silhouette in the driver's seat. She called me, her voice small. "What do I do?" "Stay inside," I said. "Do you think she's capable of something?" she whispered. The truth hovered in my throat like a stone. "I think she's already showing us who she is." Kim eventually drove away, but the damage lingered. My daughter barely slept that night. She paced. She checked the locks twice, then again. The final sharp cruelty of that week came when Joe called her at work. "I told my family we'd have the boys' names finalized by now," he said. "Kim chose 2. She said you're dragging your feet." "They're my sons," she said quietly. "Our sons," he corrected. "No," she said. "Mine." He inhaled sharply. "If you keep this up, you're going to push us into legal action. And trust me, you don't want that." She didn't answer. Silence formed between them, thick and suffocating, long enough that my daughter later told me she felt her throat close. She couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't even swallow. "I'll give you time to think," he eventually said, then hung up. That night, she sat on her couch, staring into nothing. Her hands rested on her stomach, protective and trembling. "They act like the boys already belong to them," she murmured, "like I'm just temporary." I didn't tell her my own fear, that people like Joe and Kim don't stop until someone forces them to. Their entitlement doesn't shrink, it metastasizes. Outside her window, a car door slammed somewhere in the dark. She flinched. "They're escalating," she whispered, and I knew she was right. The descent wasn't over, it was only sharpening. The moment everything shifted didn't look dramatic from the outside. No shouting, no slammed doors, no police lights, just a phone vibrating on my daughter's kitchen table while we folded tiny, newborn-sized onesies she'd bought on sale. The soft cotton fabric smelled faintly of detergent, and for a moment it felt like a normal evening, the kind we used to have before all of this. Then her screen lit up, a message from Kim. At first, my daughter didn't open it. She kept smoothing the corner of a blue onesie, her breathing steady but shallow. The buzzing stopped, then started again, then again. A triple vibration, the kind someone sends when they believe they have authority. Finally, she picked up the phone. Her eyes skimmed the screen, and I watched her whole face drain of color. I reached for her wrist. "What is it?" She handed me the phone with a stiffness that told me her mind had already begun to fracture around the edges. It was a photo, a crib. No, 2 cribs. Set up in Joe and Kim's house. Perfectly arranged, matching blue bedding, alphabet blocks spelling out the boys' names, names my daughter had never agreed to, names she had specifically said she did not want. Beneath the photo, Kim had written, "They're ready for home. Our boys deserve stability. It's time to start discussing a formal custody agreement. If you won't cooperate, we'll handle it legally." My daughter stared at the screen like she had been struck. Her fingers curled into the fabric of a baby shirt, twisting it slowly, unconsciously. The air in the room thinned. Even the refrigerator hum sounded far away. Then another message appeared. "Also, my mother ordered duplicate birth certificate frames. We'll fill in our names once everything is finalized." Our names, not hers. Something inside my daughter snapped. Not loudly, not violently, but with the quiet precision of a bone finally giving way after too much pressure. Her breath hitched once, then her face went completely still. Not afraid, not overwhelmed, just clear. "I'm done," she said softly. Her voice didn't tremble. That scared me more than all the shaking before. She stood up slowly as if testing a new weight inside her bones. Her hands weren't trembling anymore. She picked up her phone, opened the message thread with Joe, and scrolled through months of demands, manipulation, entitlement, claims over children she carried and they had never touched. She whispered, "They think if they say it enough times, it becomes true." I watched her shoulders rise with a slow inhale. When she exhaled, it was with a steadiness I hadn't seen in months. "I'm getting a lawyer," she said. I felt something shift in the room. Not hope, not yet, but the first inhale after drowning. She gathered the onesies into a neat stack, movements precise, deliberate. "They're not taking my sons," she said. "They're not taking anything." Her voice had no fire, just truth. For the first time, she wasn't reacting to them. She was reclaiming herself. Then her phone buzzed again. A call this time. Joe. His picture flashed across the screen, smiling wide, oblivious to the fact that everything had changed. She stared at his name, her jaw tightening. "I'm not answering," she said. The phone kept ringing, the sound slicing through the quiet. Then it stopped. Then Kim called. Then Joe again. My daughter turned the phone face down on the table. "I don't owe them my peace," she murmured. She walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside just an inch, checking the parking lot the way she had ever since Kim began showing up unannounced. But tonight, her posture didn't fold inward. She wasn't shrinking. She was assessing, planning. Something old and soft inside her, the part that always tried to be fair, to be gentle, to avoid conflict, finally lay down. What rose in its place was a mother, a woman, and a line that would not be crossed again. She turned back toward me, eyes steady. "Mom," she said, "tomorrow we start." Before I could respond, her phone buzzed one more time, a new text from an unknown number. "We're coming by tonight so you can sign the papers. Don't make this difficult." She looked at me, breath catching, not in fear this time, in certainty. "They're not coming in," she whispered, but headlights swung across her window, stopping, right outside. And in that instant, I knew the real confrontation had just begun. The headlights that stopped outside her building that night did not belong to the police or a friend or a delivery truck. They belonged to Joe's car. I knew the shape of it even in the dark, the dent on the back door, the faint scrape near the bumper. I'd seen it too many times pulling up with entitlement in the driver's seat. My daughter froze beside the window. The glow from the parking lot cut a thin line across her face, and I saw the shift in her expression. Not fear, not quite, but a steady alertness settling behind her eyes. "They can't come in," she whispered. "They won't," I said. But I wasn't completely certain. The engine shut off. 2 doors opened. Heavy footsteps. A second pair, lighter but quick. A woman's voice hissed something sharp. I couldn't hear the words, only the tone. It wasn't Kim's mother. It wasn't polite. It was the sound of someone unraveling. My daughter stepped back from the window and placed her hand over her stomach. Protective, instinctive. She didn't tremble this time. "Should I call the police?" she whispered. "Not yet," I said. "Let's see what they do." A pounding knock echoed through the apartment, rattling the frame. "Open the door!" Joe shouted. My daughter flinched but didn't move. Kim's voice came next, high and tight. "We know you're in there. Don't make this harder." Another knock, louder. I stepped toward the door, not close enough to be visible through the peephole. My voice remained even. "Leave!" I called out. "You have no right to be here." Silence. Then Joe said, "We just want to talk." My daughter shook her head fiercely. "No," she whispered. "I'm done talking." She opened her phone with a quick swipe and pressed record. Then she typed a message. Not to Joe, not to Kim, but to herself. A timestamp, documentation, evidence. "This is what we start with," she murmured. The knocking continued for another minute, then stopped. Footsteps retreated. The car doors slammed. The engine started. They left, but the shift inside my daughter did not leave with them. The next morning, she called a lawyer. She sat at her small kitchen table, a notebook open in front of her, pages lined with dates, screenshots, reminders of every overstep she had endured. Her handwriting was neat, steady. She had slept less than 4 hours, but her clarity was sharper than any rest could have given her. The lawyer listened for 28 minutes. I counted. My daughter spoke calmly, laying out the pattern. The uninvited appointments, the nursery photos, the messages implying ownership the night they showed up demanding signatures. She didn't embellish anything. She didn't need to. The facts were already monstrous. When she finished, the lawyer exhaled audibly. "You need to get ahead of this," he said. "Start gathering every piece of documentation. Save everything. Do not engage emotionally. Keep your boundaries strict." She nodded as if taking notes from a textbook she'd already studied. "What about custody?" she asked. "In this state, nothing can be filed until birth," he said. "But you can prepare. And you should." She ended the call and sat silently for a moment. Then she began organizing the evidence. Text messages, screenshots, social media posts, recordings, photographs, timeline logs. She created folders, subfolders, labels. She moved mechanically, but not robotically. Purpose guided her hands. I watched her reclaim power inch by inch. "I need copies of everything," she said. "I need backups, and I need to write down every time they made me feel unsafe." She pulled out a second notebook and began listing incidents in meticulous order. Her pen moved quickly, steadily. The day she sent me the maternity diet list. The day he brought custody papers. The day she came to my job. The day he said judges favor stable couples. The night they showed up demanding I sign. Each line sharpened the story she was building, not emotionally, but legally. Her breathing slowed as she wrote. She grew calmer, more anchored. Something inside her was reorganizing itself, shifting from survival to strategy. By noon, she had amassed a stack of papers thick enough to justify a binder. "I'm going to scan everything," she said. "I want digital copies, off-site storage, cloud and physical." She had become a woman preparing for war without raising her voice. That afternoon, she placed a call to her workplace. She explained the situation to her supervisor, sticking strictly to facts, no emotion, no embellishment. Her supervisor listened, horrified, and immediately arranged for security to escort her to and from the parking lot for the remainder of her pregnancy. By evening, she had an appointment scheduled with a therapist, not because she felt weak, but because she understood documentation mattered. A record of emotional distress, a professional confirming the psychological impact of harassment. "Judges look at patterns," she said quietly, "so I'm giving them one." She ordered cameras for her apartment door and windows. She changed her privacy settings on every account. She saved receipts. She printed call logs. She wrote down dates of panic, of threats, of silence. She contacted her OB/GYN's office and instructed them not to release information to anyone but herself and me. She signed confidentiality forms. She changed appointment times and refused to tell Joe in advance. For the first time in months, she wasn't reacting to their violations. She was constructing a boundary so tight it could cut. But preparation wasn't just external. Something internal was forming too, a line of steel running through her core. One evening, while sorting printed screenshots, she paused and pressed her hand to her stomach. "Do they feel you getting stronger?" I asked softly. She nodded. "They kick more when I'm calm," she said. "Almost like they know." Her voice broke for the first time that day, not from fear, but from recognition of her own resilience. But the clearer she became, the more desperate Joe and Kim grew. Late-night messages from different numbers, back-to-back calls she didn't answer. Posts on social media implying she was unstable. Comments hinting she was withholding access. She documented all of it. Once Joe left a voicemail dripping with fake sincerity. "I just want to be involved. You're shutting me out. That's not what good mothers do." She saved the file, time-stamped it, added it to the folder. Another message from Kim read, "If you think you can run your life without us, you'll be shocked how fast you learn you can't." My daughter didn't flinch when she read it this time. She simply screenshot it. She was no longer drowning, she was building a boat. But preparation brings clarity, and clarity brings painful truth. One night, she looked up from her notebook with a stillness that chilled me. "If they're pushing this hard before the twins are born," she said, "what will they do after?" I didn't answer. Some truths are too sharp to touch. She closed the notebook gently. "I need to be ready for anything," she whispered, "even the thing I don't want to imagine." I nodded slowly. "So we prepare for that too." She looked at me, fear flickering under the determination. "Mom," she said, "do you think they'll try to take them?" Outside, a car door slammed somewhere in the dark. Her eyes snapped toward the sound. Her breath caught. Not in panic, in calculation. She stood up slowly and moved toward the window, lifting the curtain just enough to see the parking lot below. A pair of headlights swept across the pavement. Then another. Then a car parked. Not theirs. Not this time. But her pulse didn't slow. "They're not finished," she whispered. And she was right. Something in the air that night felt charged, coiled, waiting. The kind of tension that arrives before a storm breaks. A storm we both knew was coming, but neither of us expected how soon the next fracture would hit, because just after midnight, her phone buzzed with a notification, a legal one, and when she opened it, her whole face changed. The legal notification she opened just after midnight wasn't a court order or a summons or anything with a judge's name on it. It was a petition, drafted, unsigned, but detailed, outlining a proposed custody arrangement Joe and Kim planned to file immediately after the twins' birth. The document named them as primary co-parents. My daughter was listed as biological vessel, maternal contact. No one reads a sentence like that and stays the same person afterward. She sat very still, her eyes scanning each line as if she needed to burn the words into memory before they could vanish from the screen. Then she whispered, "They really think they already own them." Something in her tone made the air feel tight. The next morning, she forwarded the document to her lawyer. His response came quickly. "This is overreach, but save everything. If they file anything resembling this, you will need witnesses." Witnesses, which is how we ended up at the meeting. Joe had asked for a calm discussion at his mother's house, a neutral space, he called it. There was nothing neutral about that house. I'd been there only once before, and even then the walls had felt too clean, too stiff, too curated, like a place where appearances mattered more than truth. My daughter wanted to avoid going. She said the idea made her stomach twist. But the lawyer said it was wise to document their behavior in a controlled environment, so she finally agreed, as long as I went with her. Before we left, she packed a folder with printed copies of everything: the crib photos, the custody draft, the threatening texts, the gender reveal posts. Seeing the papers stacked together made the situation look even more grotesque than it felt. The house sat at the end of a cul-de-sac, large, pale, and symmetrical in the cold afternoon light. Kim's mother opened the door before we even knocked. She wore pearls and a smile carved from ice. "Good," she said. "You're on time." Not hello, not welcome, just expectation. Inside, the living room buzzed with a rehearsed energy. Joe stood stiffly by the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back. Kim sat on the sofa, her posture too straight. Her smile stretched too tight. And then I noticed something else. A folder on the coffee table identical to my daughter's. They were ready. Kim looked at my daughter's belly before she looked at her face. "You're glowing," she said. "It's a shame you've made everything so adversarial." My daughter didn't respond. She didn't need to. We sat. The room felt crowded despite the space. The lighting was harsh, bright overhead bulbs casting unforgiving shadows. It felt like interrogation lighting, judgment lighting. Kim's mother took charge. "Let's begin," she said, folding her hands. "We're here to outline expectations for the twins." The twins. As if they weren't two unborn boys inside my daughter's body. Kim leaned forward. "We've already prepared their room," she said. "I'm sure you saw the photo. And we've picked names." "You don't pick names for children that aren't yours," my daughter said quietly. A ripple of tension crossed the room. Joe stepped forward slightly. "We want to avoid conflict." "Then stop creating it," she replied. Kim laughed, a brittle, incredulous sound. "You're being emotional. You're being delusional," my daughter said. A small silence hung in the air, sharp, decisive, as if the oxygen had paused. Kim's mother cleared her throat. "We are offering structure," she said. "Something your situation lacks." "My situation?" my daughter repeated. "You mean my life?" "No," the woman said calmly. "Your instability." My daughter inhaled, slow but deep, the way someone gathers themselves before stepping onto ice they're no longer afraid of cracking. "I'm not unstable," she said. "You people are crossing boundaries I never gave you permission to cross." Joe raised a hand as if he were speaking at a board meeting. "We want the boys half the time. he said. "I'll be signing their birth certificates. Kim will act as stepmother. We need your cooperation." "You'll sign if I allow it," my daughter replied. "Step 1, stop assuming ownership of human beings you haven't met." Kim's jaw tightened. "We are their family." "You are their father's relationship," she said. "That's not the same thing." Kim's mother leaned forward now, voice cold and steady. "If you do not work with us, you may find the legal system less sympathetic than you imagine." "That sounds like a threat," I said. "It's a warning," she replied. My daughter reached into her folder and pulled out a printed copy of the custody draft. She placed it on the table between us. "Your petition calls me a biological vessel," she said. "Explain that." Kim's smile faltered. Joe's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get that?" "You sent it," my daughter said. Kim shook her head quickly. "No, that was just an early draft." "Written by who?" my daughter asked. Kim hesitated. "My mother helped." Kim's mother didn't deny it. Instead, she gave a single dismissive shrug. "Language can be revised." "The meaning can't," my daughter said. Another silence, this one low and heavy, pressing the air downward like weight. Then my daughter pulled out the next set of printouts, the crib photos, the social media posts, the messages demanding she host a reveal party, the late-night threats. One by one, she laid them down like stones marking a path. Kim stared at them, her eyes darting, her breathing turning shallow. Joe looked at me. "You're fueling her anger," he said. "No," I replied. "She's finally seeing clearly." Kim stood abruptly, pacing toward the window. "You're twisting everything," she said. "I'm trying to love them. I'm trying to give them the life I deserved." She turned, eyes wet but wild. "You stole that from me." My daughter blinked. "What did I steal?" "My future," Kim snapped. "My family, my motherhood, everything I was supposed to have." Her voice cracked like something breaking inside her. Joe reached toward her, but she stepped away as if even touch burned. "My doctor said I'd never conceive," she said. "And then he got you pregnant. You got what I prayed for." My daughter said nothing. Her silence was a mirror, one Kim couldn't look into without flinching. Joe tried to regain control. "This is getting emotional," he muttered. "Let's bring it back. The boys need stability. We're offering it." My daughter slid one final document onto the table, a letter from her lawyer. "This states," she said slowly, "that until they are born, you have 0 legal rights. And after they're born, all custody decisions will be made formally. Not here, not now, not by you." Kim's mother scoffed. "Courts favor 2-parent homes." "They favor safety," my daughter said, "and evidence." Kim's mother's expression flickered just once, something tight and uncertain. My daughter leaned forward slightly. "I have months of documentation," she said. "Harassment, boundary violations, false claims, showing up at my job, trying to isolate me from my support system. Tonight's ambush, it's all recorded." Kim's face went pale. Joe looked shaken. "You wouldn't," he said. "You already did," my daughter replied. I saw it then, the exact moment the power balance shifted. Joe stepped back. Kim sank slowly into her seat, hands clutched together so tightly her knuckles whitened. Her mother glanced between us, calculation warring with disbelief. My daughter stood. "We're done here," she said. "This was your chance to behave like decent people. You failed." We moved toward the door. But then, Kim jumped up. "Wait!" Her voice cracked. It wasn't anger this time. It wasn't entitlement. It was something desperate, sharp as broken glass. "If you shut us out," she said, breathing fast, "you'll regret it. You don't know what we're willing to do." My daughter paused, turned slowly. "What does that mean?" Kim didn't answer. Her silence said everything. My daughter's hand tightened around her folder. Her chin lifted a fraction. "You should pray," she said softly, "that nothing happens to my sons. because the only people they need protection from are in this room. We walked out. Behind us, I heard something. A gasp, a sob, a door creak. But I didn't turn around. Outside, the cold air hit like truth. She exhaled, long and trembling, as if her ribs had been holding something caged for months. Then headlights swung across the driveway, a car we did not expect, a figure stepping out. And my daughter whispered, "Oh God, why are they here?" The figure who stepped out of the car that night wasn't Kim or Joe or anyone connected to their unraveling orbit. It was a police officer, calm, steady, illuminated by the soft pulse of the patrol car's lights. My daughter stiffened beside me, but the officer raised a hand gently. "Are you the one who filed the report earlier this afternoon?" he asked. My daughter nodded. "Good," he said. "We received additional statements tonight related to the individuals you've expressed concern about. You won't be bothered again, at least not tonight." He handed her a printed confirmation of her updated protective documentation. She held it carefully, as if it were both a shield and a weight. The officer nodded once more, then returned to his car. The engine faded into the distance, leaving us in a quiet so soft it felt like relief. My daughter inhaled, shoulders lifting, then lowering with a long exhale that seemed to empty months' worth of fear from her body. The night air was cool, almost tender, brushing against her cheeks. "Mom," she whispered, "I feel like I can breathe again." For once, it didn't sound like something she said to convince herself. It sounded true. Back inside her apartment, she sank onto the couch, one hand resting on her stomach. The twins kicked beneath her palm, a small rhythm, steady like an answer. She closed her eyes and smiled, a soft one. Real. "They're strong," she murmured. "Stronger than I thought." "You're strong," I said. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw a woman who had walked through something breaking and come out with steel in her bones. In the days that followed, something shifted permanently. Joe and Kim went silent. Not the manipulative silence they used as a weapon, but the hollow silence of people facing consequences they never believed would touch them. Her lawyer informed her that charges were being filed elsewhere as well. Documentation was moving. Statements were being taken. Their behavior had left a trail, and now it was catching up to them. My daughter no longer checked her phone with dread. She no longer flinched at headlights. She no longer doubted the story she had lived. I watched her reclaim her space the way someone re-enters a home after a long storm. She washed the tiny onesies again. She sat in the rocking chair I had passed down to her, feeling its gentle rhythm under her weight. She placed a lavender sachet on the dresser beside it, one of mine, letting the scent fill the room with something quiet and steady. Lavender had always symbolized the part of her childhood that felt fragile. Now it carried something different. Not fear, not trembling, but groundedness, clarity, strength. One evening near the end of her third trimester, I found her sitting in the nursery, tracing the edge of the baby blanket she'd once slept with herself. She folded it neatly, setting it beside the new blankets she'd bought for the twins. "My sons will grow up loved," she said softly, "not claimed, not controlled, loved." Outside, soft morning light filtered in through the blinds. Even though it was evening, the sky had that pale glow that happens before spring truly arrives. It washed the room in warmth, touching her face gently, as if blessing the new life she'd fought so hard to protect. She looked at me and said, "I'm not afraid anymore." I sat beside her, the rocking chair creaking familiar beneath me. For the first time in months, the silence between us wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Whatever storms waited beyond that moment, she would meet them with a steadiness she had earned the painful way, and I would be there, through the birth, through the nights after, through every boundary she would defend fiercely from now on. The world had tried to convince her she was a vessel, but she had remembered she was a mother, and nothing, No petition, no demand, no entitlement would ever take that from her again. When the twins finally arrived weeks later, small and warm and blinking against the light, my daughter held them close and whispered, "You're home." And they were. The war never belonged to Joe or Kim. It belonged to the woman who carried these boys into the world and claimed her own life back in the process. The lavender I once kept beside my bed used to remind me of fear. Those nights I stayed awake wondering if I was raising my daughter well enough on my own. Now, when the scent drifts through her nursery, it means something different. It means we made it. It means strength. It means victory, earned, quietly. If any part of our story stayed with you, you can tell me. Sometimes sharing where we've been helps us understand where we're finally standing.